en todos los deportes pues te das cuenta de lo que es y Messi pues para mí es el mejor jugador de la historia, pero
He's 18 years old. He wears the exact shirt number Lionel Messi made a legend. And in a room full of reporters, 48 hours before Messi walks out to face England in a World Cup semifinal, Lamine Yamal was asked a simple question about his idol. What he said next stopped the room. Not a polite dodge, not the usual, he's the greatest I respect him script every young player is media trained to recite. Yamal looked the reporter dead in the eye and said something that within hours had pundits across Spain, England, and Argentina arguing about what it actually meant. Because buried inside his answer was a warning. A warning aimed directly at the man who once held him as a baby. Stick around because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why Lionel Scaloni himself felt the need to respond to an 18-year-old's comments the night before the biggest match of his career. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, this is exactly the kind of story we live for. The moment right before kickoff when a player stops, giving safe answers and tells you what they actually believe. And right now, with the 2026 World Cup barreling toward its final week, football doesn't get any bigger than this. Wednesday, July 15th, Atlanta Stadium, Argentina versus England, a World Cup semifinal. And for the first time in over 2 decades of Lionel Messi's international career, the first time he has ever faced England on any stage at any level. But here's the twist. Spain are already through. They beat France 2-0 on Tuesday night to book their spot in Sunday's final at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, which means tonight, Lamine Yamal isn't playing. He's watching. And what he said about Messi right before kickoff has turned a match he's not even part of into something deeply personal for him. This video isn't really about England. It's about a photograph, a bathtub, a baby, and a teenager who grew up worshiping the man he might now have to destroy on the biggest stage in sports. Let's get into it. To understand why Yamal's comments landed the way they did, you need to go back almost 20 years. In 2007, a young Lionel Messi took part in a UNICEF charity photo shoot in Barcelona. In one of the pictures, he's gently bathing a baby, cradling him in his arms. At the time, it was just a sweet, forgettable charity photo, one of thousands taken that year across the world. Except it wasn't forgettable, because nearly 2 decades later, the internet discovered who that baby actually was. Lamine Yamal. Yamal has said his father kept the photo private for years, deliberately, because the family didn't want people drawing comparisons to Messi before. Lamine had even kicked a ball professionally. Imagine being measured against the greatest player who ever lived before. You're even old enough to understand what that means. It didn't matter in the end. Yamal broke into Barcelona's first team at 15. He inherited the club's most iconic shirt number, Messi's own number 10. And at just 19, he's already a Copa Trophy winner, a European champion, and one of the most electric attackers on the planet. The photo went from a private family keepsake to a viral symbol almost overnight. And now with Spain sitting in the World Cup final and Argentina, one win away from joining them, that symbol has a real chance of becoming reality. So, here's exactly what happened. After Spain dismantled France 2-0 on Tuesday to punch their ticket to Sunday's final, reporters immediately brought the photo back up. And Yamal didn't dodge it. He leaned into it, asked whether that childhood picture could actually turn into a World Cup final showdown. Yamal smiled and said something close to this. He's grown a little since that photo and he thinks Messi has too, and he hopes it happens because he'd love to face Messi in a World Cup finale. Read that again. Not I'd respect it. Not we'll see what happens. He said plainly that he wants it. But that wasn't even the headline, because just days earlier after Argentina's dramatic comeback win over Egypt, Yamal was asked directly about Messi's tournament, and he didn't just praise him. He said something far more pointed. He admitted that Messi's level of play has been incredible, and that nobody expected him to still be performing at this level and that any good. News for Messi is good news for him personally. And then came the line that stopped everyone in their tracks. He said that if he reaches the final, he wants to beat Messi, not play against, not share the pitch with, beat. That single sentence from an 18-year-old talking about the childhood idol who literally bathed him as a baby is what set off the reaction across the football world, because it's rare. Most young players in Yamal's position perform reverence. They say the safe, expected thing about their heroes. Yamal didn't. He said something true, even though it complicates the fairy tale a little. This is where it gets genuinely interesting because Yamal, I didn't stop it, I want to face him. He went further in a separate interview with Mundo Deportivo and made something unmistakably clear. The admiration has a limit, and that limit is kickoff. When pressed on what it would actually feel like to line up against the man who bathed him as a baby with a World Cup on the line, Yamal's answer wasn't sentimental. It was competitive, almost cold. He made clear that no matter how much he looks up to Messi, his only priority is doing whatever it takes to help Spain lift the trophy. Translation, idol or not, history or not. If Yamal gets the ball in space against Argentina's backline on Sunday, he is not going to ease off out of respect. He's coming to win, full stop. That's a genuinely mature, almost ruthless thing for an 18-year-old to say about the man who arguably built the entire mold he's being poured into. It would have been so easy for Yamal to lean into the fairy tale narrative the media has been pushing on him for weeks. How surreal it would feel. How honored he'd be just to share the pitch with his childhood hero. Instead, he framed it the way a serious competitor frames everything. Beautiful story, real stakes, business is business. He even drew a distinction that a lot of people missed. Yamal has said that his actual childhood idol growing up wasn't Messi, it was Neymar. He's been open that he loved watching Neymar play more, even while acknowledging that Messi is simply the best to ever do it. No debate, it's a small detail, but it tells you something important about who Yamal is as a person. He doesn't perform reverence just because it's expected of him. He says what's true, even when it complicates the story reporters are trying to write for him. Here's the part that really tells you how much noise this made. Yamal's comments didn't just circulate among Spanish media and fans online. They made their way all the way to Argentina's manager, Lionel Scaloni, in his own pre-match press conference. When asked directly about the Barcelona teenager's comments, Scaloni didn't dismiss them, and he didn't get defensive either. Instead, he essentially agreed. He said he didn't think Yamal was wrong, and pointed out that Argentina themselves had already flagged Spain as one of the tournament favorites long before the knockout rounds even began. Think about that for a second. A World Cup winning head coach, hours before facing England in a semi-final, taking time to respond publicly to comments made by a teenager on the opposite side of the bracket. That's not something that happens over a throwaway quote. That happens when a comment actually lands, when it gets under people's skin, just enough that ignoring it isn't an option. Across social media, clips of Yamal's interview spread fast. Spanish outlets, English-language football pages, and Argentine fan accounts all picking apart the same handful of sentences, debating whether it was disrespectful, refreshing, or just brutally honest. For a comment that lasted maybe 15 seconds in a press conference, it generated days of conversation. That's the kind of statement that doesn't happen by accident, even if Yamal himself probably wasn't trying to create a controversy. He was just answering honestly. Here's the twist though. None of this happens unless Argentina beats England first tonight. And that is very much not a formality. Wednesday's semi-final in Atlanta is being billed as one of the must-watch fixtures of the entire tournament. And for good reason. This is the first time in Messi's international career, more than 200 caps, over 2 decades at the very top of the sport, that he has faced England at any level. Genuinely remarkable, considering he's played against almost every football nation on the planet by now. Messi arrives at this game leading the tournament in scoring with 8 goals, and he's now sitting on 21 career World Cup goals. The all-time record, surpassing legends whose names used to feel untouchable. He's also added assists in each of his last 2 matches, giving him 10 for his World Cup career, another record, at 39 years old. Let that sink in for a second. But England aren't intimidated, and they've earned every bit of that confidence. Jude Bellingham has been sensational throughout the knockout rounds, scoring in back-to-back games. The first player to do that in consecutive World Cup knockout matches since Diego Maradona in 1986, a stat that's impossible to ignore given who England are facing. Harry Kane has 6 goals of his own this tournament. This English side has pace out wide, depth on the bench, and crucially, a squad that's peaking in its physical prime, not defying it the way Messi is. Statistically, this match is close to a coin flip. Pre-match models had England with a slight edge in regulation time, and a real possibility the match goes to extra time. The way almost every single one of Argentina's knockout games has gone this tournament. Cape Verde took them to extra time. Egypt nearly eliminated them after Argentina fell behind 2-0. Switzerland pushed them deep into overtime as well. In other words, Argentina keeps finding ways to survive. And Messi keeps finding ways to be the reason why. But this England team, fresh, confident, and built for exactly this kind of physical, high-stakes knockout battle, might be the toughest test he's faced all tournament. If there's a team capable of ending Messi's World Cup story around early, this English side under Thomas Tuchel is a legitimate candidate. Step back for a second because there's something bigger happening here than one match. And bigger than one press conference quote. Lamine Yamal represents the closing of a loop that started before he could even walk. Messi, at the peak of his early fame, unknowingly held the future of Barcelona's number 10 shirt in his arms. During a charity shoot he probably forgot about within a week. Now that baby is 19 years old, wearing that exact number, standing one Argentina win away from potentially facing the man himself on the sport's biggest possible stage, in what most people assume will be Messi's final World Cup appearance ever. If Argentina beats England tonight, and Spain and Argentina meet Sunday at MetLife Stadium, it won't just be a World Cup final. It will be a passing of the torch story, writing itself in real time, whether Messi wins it or not. The kid who was literally bathed by Messi as an infant, facing the man who might be playing his very last World Cup match ever, with the sport's biggest trophy sitting between them. And Yamal, to his credit, isn't shying away from the poetry of that story. He's leaning into it, talking about it openly, admitting how much it would mean to him personally. But he's also refusing to let the sentiment soften his edge, which is exactly what made his comments feel shocking to so many people who expected the usual soft, respectful non-answer. He wants the fairy tale, and in the same breath, he's telling you he wants to be the one who spoils the ending. That's a genuinely rare combination in an athlete this young. Emotional honesty paired with ruthless ambition and almost no filter. Between the two, no fake humility, no manufactured rivalry talk for clicks either. This wasn't a scripted trash talk moment. It was an honest answer to a direct question. Just a kid saying plainly, in his own words, "I'd love to play him, and if I do, I'm trying to beat him." That's exactly the mentality Messi himself had at 18, by the way. It's almost poetic that the player being accused of disrespecting Messi is, in that exact moment, behaving more like Messi than anyone else on the planet. So, here's exactly where things stand heading into tonight. Spain is through to Sunday's final, sitting and waiting to find out who they'll face. Argentina and England kick off Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 8 p.m. in the UK, and noon on the West Coast for anyone in Canada or the US catching this on a lunch break. Live from Atlanta, with the winner advancing to face Yamal in Spain for the World Cup title on Sunday. If Argentina wins, we get the storyline the entire football world has quietly been hoping for since that old photo resurfaced weeks ago. Messi, in what's presumed to be his final World Cup, against the teenager he once held in his arms, with the World Cup itself on the line. And Yamal's own words hanging over the entire occasion. If England wins, Yamal doesn't get his dream matchup, but he still gets his first ever World Cup final, and Messi's remarkable international career likely ends in a semi-final instead of the ending. Everyone's been quietly building toward for weeks. Either way, Wednesday's match just picked up another layer of stakes it honestly didn't need, but absolutely has now, thanks to 15 seconds from an 18-year-old that nobody saw coming. So, do you think Argentina gets past England tonight and sets up the Yamal-Messi final everyone's now talking about? Or does this England team end Messi's World Cup story one round early before Yamal ever gets the chance? And here's the real question. Was Yamal right to say what he said? Or should an 18-year-old show a little more restraint talking about a living legend? Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one. If you want to see how this all plays out, hit subscribe so you don't miss the semi-final recap tonight and the full final preview once we know exactly who Yamal is facing. See you in the next one.